Over the next 20 years, something like 3 billion people, 40% of the world, will need a new affordable home, and if not, an over-the-top mansion, perhaps a condo or a yurt will do. When architects today design a skyscraper, an airport, a home, or a mansion, they face some overwhelming challenges. Think climate change and urban density, for instance. Architect Michael Green is the founding principal of McFarlane Green Biggar Architecture and Design. He is recognized for his award-winning buildings, public art, interiors, landscapes, and urban environments. It is my pleasure to welcome Michael Green to Studio 4 to tell us more.
Thank you for having me.
And I hear you got out of your kayak in Antarctica to pay us a visit.
That's right. Just a week ago, I got back from Antarctica. It was incredible.
Really?
That's right. I was there with my son. We paddled our kayaks for 3 weeks around the Antarctic Peninsula. It was an amazing place.
And is the ice melting?
The ice
Could you tell?
The ice is melting. It's an incredible thing to hear the air coming out of ice. That air, knowing that air is probably 10,000 years old or older. And,
sure.
And realize the scale of the issues we're facing in the next little while.
And had you been up there before?
It was first time. It was
first time.
It was for my son and I, our 7th continent. So it was
really?
a bit of a milestone.
So you're the traveling architect, not just for business.
That's right.
But for pleasure.
That's right. It's all about it.
How did you get into architecture? Why? What called you?
You know, I knew from a very young age, when I was about 5, that I'd be an architect. I think, you know, sort of interest in art, interest in building, Lego on off, you know, sort of really, I think most children actually are engaged in building things, and then our education system really is sort of doesn't perpetuate into high school teaching about building, and some of us hold on to it. So, you know, I used to shyly kind of build with my blocks all the way through high school, and then continued on and became an architect.
So rather than sketching or drawing, more building?
Both for me. There's a big part of my life that's about art, so I still draw, I still paint, I actually do illustrate children's books, so there's that part of my life that's still really important to me, and then building, making things, furniture, light fixtures.
Sure,
and
so the
buildings.
Artiste in you is there.
It's pretty
runs
holistic,
deep.
Yeah.
I remember Art 101 when I drew my first building, and they made you put, it was called a perspective, I think, and you put a point here and then you drew to the point, and the building actually came alive on the page.
It's an incredible thing.
How exciting was that?
You know, right back to the days of Da Vinci and Michelangelo.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. Pretty much. Who influences you? Did you have a mentor? Did you have an Arthur Erickson, a Frank Gehry, an I.M. Pei?
You know, I'd say that there's a handful of people. People I never knew. A guy named Lou Kahn, who was a great mid-century architect in the United States, whose buildings are kind of the only buildings I've been into where I feel really powerfully, spiritually moved just by the space and the character of the space. So he's somebody that's really important to me. And then I worked for a man named Cesar Pelli, who was quite a well-known international architect. We did at the time the Petronas Towers, which were the tallest buildings in the world, that pair of towers in Kuala Lumpur that have the bridge across that you see in movies.
I haven't been there, but I've seen them.
Yes, so we did those kind of buildings, and he was a really influential person, not so much on the design side, but just the nature of his character and the kinds of things, the passion he brought to the work to do good, rather than just be about iconic looking buildings. They had to be buildings that actually mattered to the people that lived in them and the people that lived around them, and that was very influential, I'd say, in the way I try to approach my work.
Jane
now.
Jacobs approach, Death and Life of Great American Cities, and we need community, and we need green, and yes, we have glass towers, but we need connection.
Absolutely, and in fact, I think there's some really interesting things happening where even in Vancouver, the new statistics that we're seeing of public perception have moved from the idea that affordability is the #1 concern for people to actually this issue that's new, that loneliness is the #1 issue on people's minds, and how we grapple with the reality that people have 250 Facebook friends, but really only 1 or 2 close friends. And what I'm really curious about is how the built environment, how city planning and how buildings themselves have actually contributed to this sort of distance that's created between us. We're pulling people together with denser and denser cities, but we're not solving how we connect as people. And that to me is a big design issue, and something that we as architects need to change our perspective and actually start working towards.
So connect is one word. Green happens to be your name and another word, the greening of your industry. What's changing?
Not enough, but you know, I think the dedication is there to make change. I think the challenge is that we are very often just sort of adding things to our buildings to make them green, picking better carpet, putting green roofs on, adding solar panels. These are good things, but they're not going to tackle the scale of the problem that we have ahead. And so what I'm really more interested in are issues that are going to make huge systemic changes in the way we build, which is an exercise that we've been doing at looking at maybe we need to go back to base principles of how big buildings are built. And we're actually exploring that with some very revolutionary, radical ideas about changing the structural systems of skyscrapers.
Really, I like radical. So no more steel.
No more steel.
Log cabins won't do. So what?
So we are exploring with wood. And the reason is that concrete and steel as materials are fantastic materials, and most buildings, our skyscrapers in Vancouver are almost all built in concrete. But concrete represents between 5 and 8% of the world's carbon dioxide footprint. So it's a huge, huge component of climate change, that greenhouse gas that's causing climate change. It's an enormous contributor to it, but we haven't really stepped back and said, well, maybe we need to use a little less concrete in our lives to actually address it. We're talking about driving less, but you know, cars are 20% of world carbon dioxide. If concrete's 8%, maybe we need to rethink that material.
And we do grow wood, and we can harvest wood, and we can regrow wood.
Correct.
You're not talking about cutting down the old growth forest or the temperate rainforest. No, you're talking about farming wood.
That's right.
Really.
That's what's exciting about it. Now, because we take wood and we can glue it together and make engineered wood, we can make really strong material, but use much faster growth trees. And that means we're not cutting down old growth. We can change the models of forestry. And what's important, unlike steel and concrete, wood actually stores carbon dioxide. During its life, a tree is giving off oxygen and soaking up carbon dioxide. And when it falls to the forest floor and burns or rots, it gives it back to the atmosphere. But if you put it in a building, you store it. And so what we're thinking is, to address climate change, we need to reduce our emissions, and we need to find ways to store carbon. And wood is one of the only, really the only major building material we use that actually has the capacity to store carbon and help us with this problem. And so what we've been looking at is, how do we do that by increasing wood use, by coming up with new engineering models to build big buildings, not in steel and concrete, but instead in wood.
And how strong?
And very strong.
Is wood.
Very strong. So what's incredible about wood is it's 1/6 the weight of concrete, so it's very lightweight, but has the same compressive strength of traditional concrete. You can push concrete to be stronger, but it actually can, if you put on axis a tree, will be as strong as a block of concrete, weight per weight. So it's an incredibly strong material. We just have to rethink the way we actually put it together. So what we're talking about is not 2x4s and the materials you find at the Home Depot.
Right, not spruce pine fir.
That's right. We're talking about these huge panels of wood that are reconstituted, again, from very fast growth trees.
Hardwood?
It can be sometimes hardwood, sometimes softwood, depending where it comes from. So our new City Hall building in North Vancouver is a big addition we've done to City Hall, and it's just about complete. It's about 2 months from being complete, and it has a huge atrium built with a product that's called laminated strand lumber. So it's little pieces of wood glued together to make huge panels.
How fascinating. Over here.
Right over here.
There's some, I'm guessing.
Yep.
And some beetle kill wood. Yep. For sure. Why not use it?
Yep, absolutely.
Makes sense. So the new Civic Center in North Vancouver, exciting building. Not quite open?
Not 2 more months.
And it's LEED, L-E-E-D, LEED certified, which means water.
Yeah, it goes through a whole list of things that make a more sustainable building. We try, and I think the profession in general, architects are trying to make all buildings better. The LEED system is a sort of way that we, it's a checklist for that'll address energy consumption, water use, material health, healthy environments, all these sorts of issues that'll make our buildings ultimately more sustainable, our communities more sustainable.
Okay, when an architect of your ilk goes to Prince George to help design the airport, what's on your list? What's on their list? Better question.
All right, so what was great about Prince George is about early in our firm's history, we were asked to design the building. Prince George is a timber community. And so we were asked already when we showed up, the mayor said, I want a wood building. When you design airports, and we've done a lot of airports, I think I've been involved in 35 airports in the world, actually.
Really?
And so it's a fun little genre of buildings that I've been able to do and my firm's been able to do. And we have one going in Alberta right now. The fun thing is you need to capture what the nature of that community is. So you have to go in and not just plop down a generic building, You have to actually kind of realize that an airport is sort of the front door of a community. It has to capture the spirit of the community, and so it comes from actually taking the art of the area, taking the materials of the area, and finding the people, the essence of the people, and putting it into the architecture.
How interesting, because as you know now, Prince George is not a hayseed town.
That's right.
You know, it's smaller,
Yeah.
but it's a mixture of people from all over.
That's right.
Who love the North, like living in the North, highly educated.
Absolutely. They have a real sense of sort of spirit of who they are, though, as a community. And so they've really adopted that building in an interesting way. And it's been really a rewarding project for us because they love their airport, and they've asked us to come back and do all kinds of other things.
This is good.
Yeah.
Love the airport, build an Italian restaurant.
Right.
But when you say love the airport, they love arrivals, they love departures, they like the light, they like the art.
I think they actually recognize the architecture, which is great.
Really?
Architecture is often
art.
It is absolutely an art.
She says.
It's absolutely an art, and I think often people miss it. I think the way I think about architecture is that every morning you get up, you're choosing a number of design choices. The clothes you put on, fashion design, is something we all do and often don't think about. Some people don't think about, and of course, architecture is something everybody walks in and out of buildings all day, every day.
And we love or hate them.
And we love or hate them, but we don't.
And when we work in them, we love them more or hate them more. I love this building. James Chang, hello. My building.
That's right. And Jim's a great architect.
Talk to Mr. Shaw about that, but you know, my space feels good to me. Abaki, you mentioned fashion, the Abaki store in Gastown, gone now. I love that store. Darn, I love the clothes. I think they're online.
They are online, and the work that Obaki is doing is brilliant. And the work they're doing with the Obaki Foundation is brilliant, working in Africa to support communities. So
I know,
they're
and right up my color alley. I'm a black girl, you noticed. I mean, I'm a white girl who loves black. How about that?
There you go.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
So, Ronald McDonald House, that was you.
That is, and it's a new project. We are just about to start construction this spring. It's incredibly important.
Oh, it's the new Ronald McDonald House.
So
how lovely.
Currently the house is in Shaughnessy.
Yes.
It serves 13 families. We're now building a house that serves 75 families. So it's a huge change, needed. We're only going to meet today's demand. In fact, we could build for more families in the future, but to meet today's demand, there's a need for 75 families. It serves all of the Yukon and BC for families that have to bring their child to the hospital for extended stays. Incredibly important, and a really special building. We're doing things that we're really excited about that really help create a sort of community for those families of sort of peer support, and that's what the building's about.
So some soul, some peace, some healing.
Fun spaces, tranquil spaces, a real diversity of kind of needs for that, places for privacy, places for community. It's a really challenging and to me probably one of the most special projects I will ever get to work on in my career.
Where is it located?
It's at Children's Hospital, the Women's and Children's
Hospital.
Oh,
it's at Women's and Children's.
It's taken a sort of corner and
that makes sense.
Big change, and that families will be able to walk directly to the hospital, which is really lovely.
Because that's half of it, as you know. When you need to go, you need to go.
And pretty close.
Pretty close. Buildex Vancouver this weekend. What are you going to talk about? You have any idea yet?
I have some ideas. I'm on a panel. We're speaking about the relevance of architecture and whether it is relevant. And of course, as an architect, it's four of us that are architects. We all hopefully believe that in its relevance. But I think what will happen is each of the four of us will probably come with very different perspectives of why it's relevant, and whether it's about culture, whether it's about sort of sense of identity issues around culture, green, social issues. We're all going to have different perspectives.
All men or men and women?
In this case,
female architects?
All men.
Yeah. Maybe you can bring them here afterwards, not, this week, but, and we'll do a panel here. That'd be fun. You can just repeat it because by then you'll be rehearsed.
That's right.
Okay.
Although we'll never repeat anything, I'm sure.
Okay, thank you. Nice to meet you. Michael Green, Principal McFarlane Green, Biggar Architecture and Design.